I'm Kyle, and I work with some of the most impressive leaders and teams delivering services for the world's largest mining and energy companies. Real leadership happens in these tough conditions and high-risk environments, and here are the stories from leaders on the front line. So I'm here with Luke Reeves on Barrow Island. Luke is our superintendent here and looks after the 2 workover rigs that we have operating on Barrow. So Luke, 20 years with our business. Tell me a bit about your story. How'd you end up here?
Yeah, Paul, I think it stemmed from a very young age, showing a bit of interest in what my old man did for work, obviously working in the oil and gas industry. And from that very young age, having that interest, him teaching me and learning things, watching from a 13-year-old kid going out to site and watching those things happen and 1,000,001 questions.
Yeah.
Probably my interest was what drove me to start as soon as I turned 18 and finished year 12. Stepped out into Rig 4 with Eastern Well Service at that point. And then stepped away a little bit after about 4 months work into university, but quickly found out that I was done with schooling and preferred to make a living earning money. So instead of banging up debt with my HECS debt, I learned that very, very early, and there was no looking back once I started back in 2002.
Yeah, fantastic. And I was interested, talking about how you sort of followed somewhat in the footsteps of your dad, and seeing the way he used to work and run crews and that sort of thing when you were a kid. Like, what are some of the things that you took away from that experience that you feel like you apply now?
Yeah, probably the biggest thing, and even growing up on the farm, was that work ethic.
Mm-hmm.
You're here to work, so it's you're on time. Pride in what you do, and you do it to the best of your ability. That was probably the biggest thing.
Yeah.
That he instilled in me from a young age.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
Yeah, good one. And when you think about over kind of this long period of time that you've been involved in the oil field, what are some of the things that you've seen that have changed over that period for better or for worse in your experience?
Probably the culture and the safety.
Mm-hmm.
That was the biggest thing. It takes everyone to be a part of that. That builds that culture.
Yeah.
Probably in the early days, it was more relying on just the senior guys and steering the ship, and it still is somewhat to that degree today. But everyone has to have their own part in it. It's not just the senior leaders that look out for that now. It's promoted that everyone has their part to play.
Yeah, and that's interesting. And I guess kind of quickly shifts me on to those sort of, what are the non-negotiables that you manage and you have those expectations for your team. How do you communicate those? What are they?
Yeah, it's mainly comes back to our critical risk protocols. If we can go out there and take care of business, looking after those things each and every day, the rest just sort of falls in place.
Mm-hmm.
But it's mainly that, keep going back to that culture.
Mm-hmm.
Looking out for our mates and having that individual ownership as well of our own individual safety and performance.
Yeah. And I know we were talking earlier before we started the recording. I mean, you talked about kind of that team accountability and then the individual accountability and how that works together. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So the team is the culture stuff, but to build that environment, people are going to be open to
Mm-hmm.
criticism and being open to be able to pull up one of their teammates, and it's a hard thing to build, but once you have it, it's just about maintaining it.
Yeah.
And then I think building that it comes off the back of that individual ownership as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously having that team environment. We have mostly small work teams, so we do have those solid relationships and connections where it's quite easily, once you have that individual stuff running, the team culture sort of builds off the back of that.
Mm-hmm. And that focus on team, I mean, that really comes out, and from you and these discussions and others I've had with you before, and sort of always cautious of using the management budget buzzwords like psychological safety, but the important focus on the mental health of our teams and that, feeling confident and comfortable. How do you think about that, and what are the things you do to sort of create that environment?
I think just open discussions is probably the biggest thing, and trying to break down that stigma about being these tough men. I think that's the biggest thing that most of us have to overcome as individuals. But it's just looking out for your workmates, understanding that they may be going through things in their life that are tough, and picking up on those little cues, because we do obviously spend 50% of the time with our teams. At times or throughout our careers, and you get to know people quite well, and the little things that might show, and it's probably how you react to that, and just having a conversation.
Yeah, brilliant. And switching gears a bit, when you think about the innovations that you've seen over your career, changes, in equipment or ways about going about managing people, what are some of the things that you've seen that you think had made the biggest difference in your experience?
There's many innovations through the years that we've seen it, but the biggest one that still just sticks out in my mind, and the first day I rock up onto a rig site, and we're lifting pipe from a catwalk manually to the rig floor, and then we progressed to using winches, and now we have hydraulic pipe handlers. Those are the sort of innovations that we've seen throughout our business, and probably something that Easternwell and Ventia have pushed and led the way at the forefront there of our competitors. I think that's scored us a lot of work and contracts over the years.
Yeah, and reduced a lot of risk. I mean, when you think about that now, going back and watching somebody manually lift pipe, you just, everybody would stop the job if you saw something like that going on now. But I mean, of course, that was just normal practice, wasn't
back
it?
then.
So it's good to see. Yeah, good to see those evolutions. And do you have any thought on what's next? What are the big things that are coming in the future?
Yeah, like there's such an array of different technologies out there. There's sky's the limit, really. It's just trying to find what is applicable or what we can apply to our business. But yeah, it's I'm not too sure what's next. I wish I had the crystal ball.
Yeah, well,
I
do too, because I'd like for you to tell me, because it is a challenge. You're right. Thinking about what's going to drive the biggest improvement, but also that things come at a cost, and there's value involved in how we create that. And I mean, I think we're actually quite fortunate to have all these really smart people around us to help us figure that out. Like, to your point, we don't as individuals have to know the answer to that, do we? We can work with our teams and build that and continue to have these new evolutions. No, well, that's fantastic, man. Look, I really appreciate the time, and yeah, certainly, the experience that you can share out of a long career in the oil field has been really valuable. So yeah, thanks for that.
Cheers for the time today. Thank you.